Margot, 7 months pregnant, discovers her husband S' 14-month affair and hidden lies. But instead of breaking, she chooses power, calls her lawyer, and reclaims her life, showing us that courage, self-worth, and clarity in the face of betrayal are invaluable lessons. So if this story moved you, support the channel with 1 like and 1 share to inspire more life-changing tales. Thanks for watching.
She found the playlist on a Tuesday morning. 47 songs titled Cass Summer. She was 7 months pregnant, and she read 14 months' messages in just 11 minutes. Then she placed the phone back exactly where she found it. She got her yogurt, ate it standing up, and stared at the yard her own money had paid for. Then she made 1 phone call. She didn't call to scream or confront him. She called her lawyer, Russell, and said, "I need the prenuptial documents." That was the moment she stopped being his wife and remembered she was an Ellison. He had spent $18,000 on flowers for another woman's birthday party, a party he planned while she was assembling their nursery. He toasted a 30-year-old in a red dress in a building her family owned. He never actually read the prenup. He never asked about her trust fund. He assumed she was simple and that she needed him. That was his one big mistake, and it was about to cost him everything. The most dangerous woman in the room is the one who already knows the truth and is simply deciding what to do next. This is not just a story about betrayal. It is about a woman who made herself small so that someone else could feel tall. And this is about the moment she decided she was done shrinking. If this story made you feel something, drop an emoji in the comments. And if you know a woman who is a little too quiet right now, share this with her. She might need to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss the stories that actually matter. It was a soundtrack for a life I was supposed to be living, left carelessly on the kitchen counter. It was named Cass Summer, and it held 47 promises. Margot only knew 3 of them. I had told Margot I despised those songs. It was easier than explaining that they now belonged to someone else. It was a Tuesday in late August. I pictured her at home, 7 months pregnant, standing in the kitchen where the light always made her look like a stranger. Once hopeful, now just washed out, overexposed. She would see my phone and think it was hers. They look identical. I never locked it around her. She called it trust. I called it confidence. The supreme confidence of a man who believed his wife had stopped looking for anything more at all. She received his next text notification first. The little preview said, "Can't wait, Saturday." She would have put the phone down, then picked it up again, fought the urge. Then she would have given in. Of course she would. A voice in her head screamed, "Don't look, Margot." But she had to look. She would open the thread, see the name was listed as work, a flimsy shield. Then she would scroll back for 14 months. She would stand there for 11 minutes and witness a ghost marriage. My real marriage. The words were not vulgar. They were much worse. They were full of private dinners at places I told her I was too tired to go to. She would read until she could not breathe, till she saw the recent messages. The Rosewood rooftop confirmed 50 guests. The expensive champagne, the tasting menu. Cass, "You are insane," and ply, "You only turned 30 once. You deserve the world." She would look at her own body, carrying my child, as I planned a whole world for another woman. She would not cry, not yet. Her mind would go cold and fast, like a machine processing an impossible truth. She would not take a picture. She would not read it again. She would place my phone back on the kitchen island exactly where it was. Then she would get her yogurt. She would stand and eat it with a spoon, and she would stare at the yard that I had landscaped for her. Yard her money paid for. That thought would finally surface, a thought she was taught to suppress. Her family, her father and his rules about quiet wealth, about your character being the loudest thing in a room. It was a lesson I had never bothered to learn. And her character was now eating yogurt in bare feet, deciding if we were finished. She would not call her friends, not yet. She would just wash her spoon and put it in the rack, because that is what she does. And she maintains order when her world is breaking apart. When I came downstairs at 7:45, my tie was perfect. The coffee was made. She sat with her laptop, her reading glasses on. She looked up at me. "There's coffee," she said. I poured a cup. I said nothing about Saturday. I kissed the top of her head, an affectionate but empty gesture for a ghost. And then I walked out the door. She would sit in the silence I left behind, hearing only the refrigerator. Then she would pick up her own phone. She would dial a number she knew by heart. The phone would ring twice. A man would answer. "Russell," she would say, "I need the prenuptial documents and the Ellison trust schedule." There would be a pause. He would ask her why. "Not yet," she would tell him, "but soon." Then she would hang up. She would feel the baby move inside her, kicking. A daughter who was already demanding to be heard. "I have got you," she would whisper to her belly. "I have got you." The morning light would fall on her. It would no longer seem too bright. It would feel like a beginning. The quiet certainty of a woman remembering the ground beneath her was always hers to command. She never told me the real truth about her family. She had her reasons, or so she probably thought. But in that silent kitchen, holding a secret that could swallow a continent, she would finally understand that the walls she built to protect herself were about to become her fortress. Her best friend, Patrice, has known her for 11 years. In 11 years, Patrice knew two things for sure. Margot never broke down in public, and a call at 8:15 in the morning meant the world had just ended. Patrice would make the good coffee, the French press she saved for real emergencies. Margot would arrive in the clothes she slept in, her hair held up by a pencil. Pregnant, she walked like someone carrying the weight of a final choice. She would sit at the table and tell Patrice everything. The phone, the songs, the texts, the party. Patrice would listen, her silence a force of pure restraint, her jaw tight. When the story was over, she would switch some lips again. "How are you?" "I am fine," Margot would say. "You are not fine." "No," Margot would admit, "but I am functional." She would want to confess that she always knew. Not the details, but the feeling, a deep wrongness she had blamed on hormones or stress, or even my moods. She knew. She just did not want to be a woman who knew things like that. Patrice only knew a fraction of the truth about Margot's money. To me, she was a simple comfort, raised well somewhere in Connecticut with a family place. Her father, Theo Ellison, had been what some might call comfortable. Old money, but the very quiet kind. Margot's life was modest, a normal car and simple clothes. Her little job as an art consultant was just a passion project, something to keep her busy. That was a kind of freedom, I suppose. The kind that does not need to show off. I never bothered with the details. Why would I? Russell Hart was just some family lawyer. I signed her papers at my desk, the prenuptial agreement she slid in front of me before we got married. I had a lawyer I found online look it over for maybe 40 minutes. This was for the best. That contract on my life, the one I never read closely enough, was ending. I never said this out loud, of course. Vivian Ellison had armed her daughter with a silent weapon, and I had foolishly made her use it. Her friend Patrice probably asked her how long. 14 months is what she would have said. 14 months. The number barely registered. Our second anniversary in Portugal feels like a movie I watched, not a life I actually lived. I remember she had a sunburn on her shoulders. I bought a piece of tile, a prop for the stage set of our home. It still hangs there, a silent reminder. Patrice would then ask about the baby. That was 13 months ago, a year and a month. So yes, I was already seeing someone else when she told me she was pregnant. I held her. I spoke the lines that were required of me. We will figure it out together. Every word was a lie. I told her I was the luckiest man alive. The lie tasted like ash. My real life was happening somewhere else. The quiet kitchen hummed, completely unaware. A bird hit a window, an ordinary sound on an unbearable morning. Her friend Patrice had always hated me. I could feel her judgment for years. She saw small cruelties in my words, little aggressions. She thought I saw Margot's art as a hobby, a way for a bored woman to pass the time. She'd noticed how I guided conversations at dinner, the comments about our house, my car, my surprise when she knew something I did not. Margot called it modesty. That was not it. I saw her as simple and predictable. There is a difference. I never imagined she was hiding anything. I simply assumed there was nothing important to find. I sat with that thought as the truth of it settled deep inside me. She never suspected I was hiding anything. She just believed there was nothing important to find. Then my friend asked the question I always avoided. What are you going to do? I took a long moment. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. I looked at the road ahead. I am going to the party, I said with absolute certainty. Saturday at the Rosewood rooftop. 50 guests, the best champagne, and a full dinner for Cassandra's 30th birthday. But my wife Margot has no idea. I said it quietly, because I have to keep it a secret for just one more week. Some truths, you see, need a gentle landing. She bought a new black dress for the evening, something with a special waist. I barely gave it a glance. I knew what it cost, and it was nothing to her. The drive to the office was 22 minutes long. I spent every second thinking about the trap I was in, remembering the things I tried so hard to forget, like meeting her mother for the first time. Vivian Ellison greeted us at their house in Connecticut. It was a smaller, quaint cottage on the property. Vivian served us tea. She was perfectly polite. She showed me her roses, asking all the right questions about my job, my family, and my intentions. Later, when I was out of the room for a moment, she asked Margot a question. He doesn't know, does he? It was more of a statement. No, Margot told her. Then she asked when she planned on telling me. When I know he loves me for me. Her mother had this certain look, a look that just saw right through everything. That is not wisdom, she said. That is fear, and you know the difference. Yes, Margot said she did, but she never told me the secret. Maybe she planned to, after a year, after we had built something real. But 1 year turned into 2, and then the wedding came. And I signed a prenuptial agreement without a second thought. That secret, if you want to call it that, became the foundation of our whole life together. A wall I never even knew was there. She never lied about who she was, she just failed to tell the whole story. Was that wrong? I have been thinking about that for 3 years, and I still do not have a good answer. The women I dated before her, the ones with money, they looked at you a certain way. Like you were a prize to be won, or a fix for a problem they did not really have. But Margot looked at me like I was just a man, a normal, sometimes difficult man. And I needed that. I needed to be a person, not some kind of financial investment. But maybe I just created a wife who thought she married up, who believed I was this provider. Someone who thought she was completely dependent on me. I stopped my thoughts right there. I was in my car in our driveway. I had been sitting there for 6 minutes with the garage door hanging wide open. I could see my golf clubs tucked in the corner and the old paint cans from the renovation we did 2 years ago. I paid for all of it, and she's just picked out the colors. It seemed fair at the time. I went inside. She would not be home until 7, so I had a few hours. I walked past her home office, the room I called her art room, as if it were a child's playroom. It was a cute little nickname for her cute little hobby. She would sit at her mahogany desk, open her laptop, and make her calls. She took it all so seriously. The 2 chairs across from her desk were always empty, waiting for clients that never came. In my head, I was 62 years old, but on the outside, I looked 55. I was the head of this family. I felt like I had known her longer than she had known herself. I saw myself as a younger version of my own father trying to build a legacy. It was both comforting and a little terrifying. She would tell me about her day and I would listen, my face always perfectly calm, like it was carved from marble. When she was done, I would ask how her project was going. 31 weeks pregnant. I needed to know what I was entitled to. I would ask my lawyer about that someday when the time was right. For now, there was a trust, so she was protected, and my future assets were safe. What we built together, that was ours to share. It was all about fairness. That is what my lawyer could never understand. He just saw the numbers, the house, the bank accounts, the car. He saw what I put in versus what she put in, which he called a pittance. But what about the life I gave her? What about the sense of normality? The house is worth $1.2 million now. I was there for every single late night dealing with contractors. She just wrote a text from some endless bank account. That was her contribution, cold, easy money. Her father bought her a painting in 1987 for $40,000. She barely even looks at it, and now it is worth a fortune. That is the world she comes from, a world I can never really touch. What if I knew about the trust? She must wonder. She thinks I am a fool. She thinks I am completely blind, and she made sure of it. She showed me a document before our wedding. "Sign here," she said. "Just a formality." I never had a claim, I can see that now. Not on her name or her money or her inheritance. My only claim was on her as a person, and I thought that was enough. But everything was designed to keep me out, like a guest in my own house. So now my lawyer asks me what I want to do. I told him I needed this party, just this one night. He thinks it is all about the other woman, Cassandra. He cannot understand that this party is for me. This is my flag planted on my own rooftop. I will not let her take this away from me. He would tell me to be careful, to think about the consequences, not my feelings. He would ask if he should be worried. I would tell him no. I am not a man who creates drama. I just need one night. I need her to see the life that I built without her money. I need her to understand what she is about to lose. I know she will have Russell arrange everything. She will make sure of it. She will leak documents about her company, the press releases, the old articles, the board announcements. She wants to remind me who she really is. She thinks a quick Google search is going to scare me, that I will find something I do not already know. But then my lawyer told me something, a detail I had missed. The kind of detail that is never an accident with her family. The Rosewood rooftop, the venue I picked for my party, is owned by a group, and her family's trust has a 43% stake in it. I was very still when he told me. I was renting a room in her own castle to feel free. I could have canceled. I could have found another place. My lawyer was silent, just waiting. I told him I was not canceling. No, he knew I would not. "I will be there," I told him. I spent the afternoon thinking not about anger, but about logistics. I was finally making my own move. I prepared my board, I made my moves on Wednesday. Then, on Thursday and Friday, I performed my role as a husband. A flawless performance. I came home on Wednesday and she made pasta. The kitchen smelled like garlic. I ate 2 full plates. It was great. I asked about her day. I was physically there, but my mind was a million miles away. On Thursday, I asked her specific questions about her work, questions that required specific answers. I watched her talk and I felt the exhaustion of a man who has been faking it for so long. Ease was a foreign country. On Friday morning, she went to her 31-week appointment. Dr. Caroline Merritt was a calm and precise woman. She made everything sound like a simple conversation, not a medical diagnosis. She pressed the cold metal to Margot's skin, the doctor's wand sliding across her stomach. I glanced over at the screen. Everything looks perfect, good. The baby was right on schedule, a strong heart, in the right position. Margot watched the monitor, and I saw a flicker of something on her face. It was not joy, it was something else. I drove her home. She kept repeating the doctor's words. The baby was perfect, her heart was strong. "Great," I said. "That is great." My phone buzzed in my hand. It was an urgent message, a real problem. My focus snapped right to it. She was watching me, I know she was. She must have noticed. I never said the name Eleanor. We chose it 2 months ago. I helped pick it, then I just filed it away like a completed task, a decision made. I had to stop the spinning in my head. There were things to do on Thursday. On Thursday, I went out. "Work drinks," I said. I was home by 11. I smelled like good whiskey. I smelled like a different life. She was in bed, reading, but she pretended to be asleep. That pretending was second nature to us now. I do not think she even noticed she was doing it. I waited until her breathing was deep and slow. I lay there in the dark. I thought about what she was carrying, and not the baby. I could feel it, like a storm building behind her calm face. But tonight was for me. It was for my own grief. I grieved for the man I was when I first met her, the man who thought he could be enough. For the years I spent making myself smaller, quieter, more acceptable. I thought that was love, but it was just survival. On Thursday night, after I was asleep, she got up and went downstairs. I did not hear her. The house was silent like a tomb, but she could not be still. She cleaned the entire first floor with a kind of fury. When you cannot control the big things in your life, you control the small things. She wiped down every counter. She rearranged the entire pantry. She was on her hands and knees, 7 months pregnant, cleaning the grout with a toothbrush at 11 o'clock at night. It was insane, and she had to know that, but she could not stop. When there was nothing left to clean, she ran a bath. She just needed to do something, anything. She wouldn't have even taken off her clothes. Just sat on the edge of the tub in her old jeans and sweatshirt, feet in hot water, just sitting. The bathroom tiles were green. She picked them out, drove an hour to a specialty shop, spent 2 hours finding that exact shade. She loved those tiles. She told me once, "I'm going to miss these tiles." That's what she would be thinking about. That's the thing that would finally break her. Not my party, not the texts, not the playlist I made for another woman, not the thought of my hand on someone else's back. That was all just noise. But the tiles, they were real. The pale green tiles she chose for our home, the ones she built with a man she thought she knew. She'd cry for the tiles. She'd cry for what they meant. And she'd do it quietly. She learned how to do that a long time ago. Then she would dry her eyes, drain the tub, and get back into bed. Meanwhile, there was Cassandra Whitmore. I know Margot searched for her, using methods that leave no digital footprints, a skill her father had taught her for situations just like this one. Cassandra, 29, from Ohio, a marketing director, but not at my company, a different one. It all started with a simple thought, a better life. Cassandra was the blueprint for that life. Her Instagram was a window into a world with actual sunlight, travel, friends, a family she adored. She got her master's degree. She made things. She was a whole person, not just a list of responsibilities, not a series of boxes to check off. Margot was a life I'd agreed to. Cassandra was a life I desperately wanted to choose. It was a tough distinction, but one I had to make for my own sanity. I convinced myself that Margot must have known something was missing, that somewhere deep down she was unhappy too. The only other option was too much to bear the thought that she was perfectly happy in a life I found so empty. It was kinder to believe we were both lost and I was just the one who found the map. None of this was an accident. I built this new reality with very deliberate hands. I bought the tickets. I made the reservations. I sent the text because she deserved to hear those things. I made this choice every single day for 14 months. This wasn't a mistake. It was a course correction, a different path that felt more real than my original one. On Thursday, I played my part. I came home. I was physically there. Guilt is just this low hum you learn to live with. I poured the wine. I faked interest at a conversation we had 3 days ago. I put my phone on the table, face down. Small sacrifice for a much bigger sense of peace. She asked how I was doing. Honestly, she said. She felt like everything was about to shift. I agreed with her. The third trimester. It was the perfect cover. So much easier than telling the truth. Yes, I thought, something like that. I refilled her water glass, a simple, husbandly gesture. It helped the lie feel a little more real. I have a client thing on Saturday, a huge event. You would be bored. It is all business talk. You should just rest, maybe have Patrice over. I couldn't meet her eyes. This script was so rehearsed by now, it felt more true than the actual truth. She smiled and said, "Of course, have a great time." The relief I felt was like a sharp, clean intake of air. She had no clue what was really waiting for me. On Friday, I confirmed the flower delivery. I called the catering company, and I made sure her favorite champagne was on ice. Every single detail was a tribute to what we were creating. This wasn't just some party. It was a new beginning, a quiet announcement to the world I was choosing to live in. She deserved to be celebrated. That was my one clear thought. I wanted to give her a night that was all hers. I wanted her to be the focus of something beautiful, with no shadows, no need to whisper. A place where we could finally just be. The party wasn't for me. It was my gift to her. It was my way of saying, I see you, I'm choosing you. My mother would never get this kind of logic. She only understands duty and obligation. She would say what I'm doing is a betrayal. But how can it be a betrayal to finally pick happiness, to finally walk toward the light? On Saturday morning, I woke up in a hotel room, alone. My head was clear and I was ready. The rooftop was perfect. The city lights looked like a net of stars thrown across the sky. That magic hour glow that makes everything feel brand new. I had planned this space for months, the white tablecloths, the little dance floor, the expensive champagne in silver buckets, the smell of jasmine floating in the air. That wall of flowers was a work of art, a waterfall of white and cream. It cost me a fortune, but I knew she would love it. Guests started to arrive, and a low murmur of conversation filled the air. I felt a real sense of ownership, a deep kind of satisfaction. I made this happen, this perfect moment. I told myself to just be patient. Do not scan the crowd for her. Let the evening happen. Let her find me here, in this world that I built for her. I stood near the bar, needing a drink. The bartender noticed my wedding ring. He had no idea it felt like a costume prop tonight. I found a spot near the railing. The skyline view was the best from over there. I could see the whole city. I waited for 3 minutes and 40 seconds, and then I saw my business partner, Graham. We talked about work. He laughed at a joke I told. I was wearing a new suit, one Margot had never seen before. It belonged to this other life. I felt light, free. The weight I carried around every day was just gone. I realized that weight was my other life. It wasn't my job, it wasn't the baby on the way. The weight was the lie of my own happiness. And then, she was there. She walked up the stairs wearing a red dress, and my entire world just tilted on its axis. The whole party seemed to rearrange itself around her. Conversation stopped. People turned to look. I turned my head, and I'm sure my face said it all. It wasn't just desire, it was recognition, like finding something you were sure you had lost forever. I could finally breathe again. I could breathe here, with her. She was the reason, the justification for every single difficult choice. She was worth all of it. She was my reward. At home, I was the burden. Here, I was just a man in love. I knew with a sudden, painful clarity that she was a fact, like the sky, undeniable, beautiful. I walked across the room to her. I kissed her on the cheek, my hand finding the small of her back. It felt like I was finally home. Her hand came to rest on my arm, a simple, easy gesture of belonging. Then Graham saw something. I watched his expression shift from confusion to a slow realization to just pure, animal panic. He looked like a man who'd just seen a ghost, a man who knew the storm was just about to hit. He mumbled some excuse and practically ran away from me, moving toward the edge of the rooftop. His face was a clear warning, a silent alarm that I couldn't quite understand yet. He spoke to her first. I couldn't make out his words. I only saw the careful way he positioned himself. Then I followed his eyes, and I saw her. Standing over by the bar. The world just stopped moving. Two lives crashing into each other in one impossible place. My mind was racing. This was not a coincidence. This was a setup. How did she know? What did she have planned? She was an intruder in my new world, a ghost from the life I was trying so hard to escape. I had to move. I had to get control of this. I walked toward her, forcing a look of surprise and delight onto my face. "Margot," I said, "what a surprise." "I was invited," she replied. Her voice was steady. "This is a hotel, Derek." Her eyes scanned the party, my party. The lighting was perfect. The jasmine scent was perfect. $18,000 on flowers just for Cassandra. This was right. This was how she should be celebrated. Then I saw Margot. My jaw locked up. I felt the muscles tighten. 3 years, and she could still read me like a book. A curse. "A work thing, a colleague," I stammered. The lie sounded weak. "It was for a client," she corrected me, her voice like a pleasant, sharp knife. "Yes, a client." "Name them," she said. The silence was her weapon. It always has been. The way she said my name didn't have a single tremor. No fear, just absolute certainty. "What is their name?" The silence stretched out. The party noise faded to a distant hum. The whole world shrank to the small space between us. A strange sort of calm settled over her face. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness. It was clarity, a terrible kind of final clarity. I grabbed her arm. We had to get away from here, away from all these watching eyes. The show was over. This was real. My face felt numb. I was scared, and I was already calculating my next move. Deep down, some part of me was strangely relieved. The waiting was finally over. "I can explain all this," I started. "The words I know. You do not need to." "I found your phone." Her words were simple, straight to the point. Tuesday morning. The elevator dinged somewhere nearby. The party was a far-off dream, a world I could no longer get to. I know about Cassandra. The name just hung in the air between us. 14 months. You told her she deserved the world. She paused, twisting the knife. Our daughter is 7 months old, Derek. You promised someone else the world while I was carrying your child. Her words landed like an actual punch. The blood rushed out of my face. Margot, I'm so sorry. It's never that simple, is it? Things get complicated. I know, she said. Everything gets complicated. That no excuse is just how life is. I love you, I told her, but the words just hung in the air, completely empty. This room, this party, this is not done. She cut me off. Her voice was quiet but final. Please, just don't. So I stopped. We'll talk, she said. But not here. My lawyer is going to call your lawyer on Monday. And until then, don't you dare come home. Her words felt like a sentence. I just stood there, staring. I'm going back to the party, she said. Why? She looked right at me, at this man she thought she knew. This tie Cassandra picked out, my brand new suit, and the look on my face. The look of a man who just lost a game he never even knew he was playing. Because I am not the one who has to leave, she said. And with that, she turned and walked back toward the music and the lights. She grabbed a glass of water from the barman. She found a little table on the edge of the rooftop. She just sat down, all alone, pregnant, at my lover's 30th birthday party. And she looked calm. The kind of calm that tells you the world is about to burn. And here's the part I didn't know for the longest time. She had cried on her way up in the elevator. But not where I could see. Never, ever for me to see. She didn't cry for the guests. And she didn't cry for Graham. She cried just for herself. For 43 seconds between the ground floor and the rooftop, she leaned against the glass and just silently fell apart. It was a skill she'd learned a long time ago. Then the doors opened and she stopped. She was always so good at stopping. That was the whole problem. I didn't go back, I couldn't. Graham told me later what happened next. He found her about 20 minutes after I had run off. He walked up to her like a man trying to disarm a bomb. He sat down with a whiskey he obviously needed. Margot, he started, looking like an actor who forgot his lines. I need you to know I didn't know about this for a while. But then you did know, she said, just stating a fact. He had to be honest. Yes, he said. And you didn't say anything. She just looked at him. Graham, I'm not mad at you. I just needed you to know that I know. He nodded, looking almost grateful that she was handling it, telling him what to feel. Is there anything he started to ask? No, she said. Just enjoy the party. And then he left her there. She sat by herself for 35 more minutes. Her friend was on the way. She just waited, surrounded by all of my terrible choices, surrounded by the jasmine flowers and the city lights. And Cassandra saw her. I didn't know it at the time, but she was watching. Cassandra Whitmore, 29 years old, on her 30th birthday, and she was starting to ask questions. She saw me run off. She saw the pregnant woman sitting alone in the corner, the same woman my business partner was confessing to. So she asked Graham. And Graham, who was already having the worst night of his life, told her. He told her just enough. And Cassandra spent the rest of her perfect birthday party with a horrible new realization. The story she thought she was in was a complete lie. Its ending had been rewritten without her knowing. I know I should feel bad about that. And a small part of me does. The selfish part. The part of me that needed her to be uncomplicated, to be my escape. That part is almost sorry for what I did to her. Then Vivian arrived, Margot's mother. At 9:15, 40 minutes late, which meant she'd stopped for a drink or new shoes, or maybe both. Vivian Ellison didn't just enter a room. She quietly took it over. She became its center of gravity. She walked right to Margot's table, and she sat down. She looked at her only daughter. Are you okay? No, Margot said. It was the first honest thing she had said all night. Vivian just took her hand. She didn't say a word. No advice. No judgment. No opinion about what a failure I was. She just sat there with her. She held her hand. She let the silence do the work. Sometimes that's the only thing you can do. They sat that way for a very long time. The party just swirled around them. People made toasts. Food was being served. The music was way too loud. The city lights burned below. At 10:30, Margot finally spoke. I want to go home. Yes, Vivian said. I want to go home and sleep. And I want to take this one day at a time. Yes, Vivian said again. That is exactly right. Margot drove herself home. She refused to take the car that I paid for. She wanted those 22 minutes alone. The quiet of the highway at night with music from some forgotten radio station playing low. She got home at 11, but couldn't bring herself to go into our bedroom. She just stood at the door, looked at my side of the bed, and then turned away. She went to the nursery, the room she had made so perfect, the soft white walls, the crib she had built, the rocking chair placed just right to catch the morning sun. She sat down in that chair, just holding her stomach. It was 3 in the morning. This was never part of the plan. She had a picture of what our life would be. It wasn't a perfect picture. She was never that naive, but she believed it was a real one. The 3 of us, a family. And now that picture was just ash. She was alone in the dark, trying to imagine a new one. I had made her feel small, not because she was, but because she just wanted me to choose her, the real her. So she hid parts of herself away, hoping to be loved for who she was. What a terrible irony. I chose a version of her that wasn't even real. I chose a woman who needed me. But she never needed me, she only wanted me. And I could never have loved the real her if I'd truly known her. She didn't regret the baby. She never regretted the baby, only her choices. Then the baby moved a slow, gentle roll, not a sharp kick. In the quiet darkness of the nursery, it felt like an answer, like someone was with her. We are together. She stayed in that chair until the sun came up. Then she made coffee. On Sunday, I texted her from my hotel. I need to talk to you, please. She read it, put her phone down, then picked it back up. She typed just 4 words, Monday through our attorneys. Then she put her phone away and started watering her 17 plants. She watered every single plant in our apartment. She told me about this later. She counted all of them. 40 minutes of counting them. A quiet little ritual. A way to keep herself from falling apart. Something simple, done with care. Monday morning, 10 o'clock, Russell Hart called my lawyer, Philip Crane. Philip is a good guy, but he's not a killer. Russell's voice was calm, not rushed at all, the voice of a man who has never lost a case. He told Philip that Margot Ellison wanted a divorce, that our prenuptial agreement was rock solid, and that our shared property was much, much smaller than I thought. Most of our assets came from her private trust. He said if I tried to fight it, certain family business would become very public. Philip called me back 45 minutes later. I had so many questions, he had 0 answers. Russell, her lawyer, called my lawyer and brought up Ellison Holdings. My lawyer asked what I'd told him about it. I said it was just some private family trust. I told him he should have read the prenup. The truth is, I hadn't read it carefully either. There was a long pause. Then my lawyer told me his exact words. My client needs 24 hours. And yes, I definitely needed 24 hours. I hung up the phone. I just sat there at my desk. The light outside felt weak. Summer was definitely over. Then at 2:15, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I have this weird fear of unknown numbers, this feeling that they're only calling with bad news. It was a woman's voice, careful and tired. Cassandra Whitmore. She said she was sorry and that she could hang up. I just listened to her voice, a ghost from a life that was now completely gone. I told her not to hang up. I needed to hear it. I am sorry. That's all she wanted to say. She knew it wouldn't fix a single thing, but she wanted me to hear it from her. Okay, was all I could say. He told me, she said, that your marriage was over, that you were separating, just working out all the details. That was the story he'd told me from day one. That's what she believed. I didn't say anything. I know how this sounds, she kept going. The words of the other woman, the classic excuse. But I need you to know, I never would have done this if I knew you were pregnant. If I knew there was a baby. And then her voice just shattered. I am so sorry, so sorry. And I believed her. I hated that I believed her. It would have been so much cleaner if she were just a monster. But this wasn't an act. This was the sound of a woman who was finally waking up. She was calling me because she finally got it. The man she loved was a liar, the very same man who lied to me. We weren't friends, we weren't on the same side, but we were connected by his lies. Cassandra, I said, Did he ever talk about his money, what he owned? There was a pause. He talked about his real estate deals. He said once that his wife had some family money and that it helped buy the house. Did he ever mention a name, the family name? No, she said. He never told me. Tell you what? Nothing, I said. It's not important. Thank you for calling me, Cassandra. I really mean it. Is there anything I can do for you? She asked. Actually, I said slowly, there just might be. The second we hung up, I called Patrice. I sat in my art room, looking at the painting my father had loved. The light was hitting it just perfectly, making the colors feel alive. My father once stared at this painting for 20 minutes without saying a single word. It was the calmest I'd ever seen him. I told Patrice everything about Cassandra's phone call. She was quiet for a very long time, and she asked if I was just going to forgive everyone, if I was going to take on all the pain myself. No, I said, I'm done absorbing pain. Good, she said. So what are you going to do? I'm going to let Derek see exactly what he had, I told her. I'm going to let the entire world see it. I said it out loud to the empty room, just to make it feel real. I had made myself smaller for him, just so he could feel bigger. I am done being small. At 3 o'clock on Tuesday, Derek came over. He called first. He asked if we could talk, not with lawyers, just the two of us. I said yes. He needed to see the whole picture. It wasn't about being cruel, and it wasn't about getting revenge. It was so he would finally understand the true value of what he had thrown away. He looked terrible. 2 nights in a hotel had completely worn him down. The call from my lawyer had clearly destroyed him. He looked like a man who had done the math over and over again and hated the answer every single time. He sat down at my kitchen table. I sat right across from him. Tell me what you need, he said. I had never heard that tone in his voice before. It was the sound of complete and utter defeat. I need you to understand something first, I said, before we even start talking about my needs. I took a deep breath. When we met, it was actually a test. I needed to know if you could love me for me, apart from my family. That has always been everything to me. My father made sure money was never a problem. All I wanted was to be loved by someone who did not know, to be wanted for me. Derek did not move. You passed the test, I said softly for a while. I am not finished. He went silent. You passed, and then you stopped seeing me. I was just part of the room, and while I was just a fixture, you found someone else. I understand that, I do. But that party, while I was home, 7 months pregnant, that was not a mistake. It was a choice. One you made for 14 months. The man who always had an excuse was silent. I know, he whispered. Do you know who owns the building with that rooftop? I asked. The Rosewood? No. Then I told him. I watched the truth burn through him. It was necessary pain. I had to let her finish. This was the only way. She needed to say it all to feel powerful. For a moment, I would let her. For the future I was trying to save. Then the words changed. She spoke of numbers, of foundations, of a world I never knew. My mind went blank. The woman I loved was a stranger, an elaborate lie. She had not built a life with me. She had merely observed me in hers. How much? I asked. The question was a reflex, the only solid thing I could grasp. The number does not matter, she said. But it did. It was the only thing that mattered. She was more than my wife. She was my keeper, my judge. And when I asked if we could fix this, if our life was real, she did not hesitate. The word was a lock turning, a door closing forever. This was her world, not ours. I saw that now. I thought we were negotiating a divorce. I was being handled. My attorney tried. He sent proposals. They were empty gestures. Her lawyer's politeness was insulting, just a reminder of how powerless I really was. They called the settlement generous. It was charity, a tip for the guy who once shared her bed. I did not fight. I had nothing to fight with. After our talk, Cassandra searched the name Ellison, the name Margot had hidden. She showed me the articles, the photos, the whole empire. I saw the Forbes piece, the impossible numbers, the buildings with her family name carved on them. I signed the papers. What else could I do? A man cannot fight a god, he can only kneel. The full, brutal picture. I wondered if she felt triumphant. She must have. This was not a breakup, it was a victory. In her world, winning means erasing the parts that no longer serve you. She would tell herself she was landing on her feet and think of women less fortunate. A beautiful lie to make the execution feel like grace. She was not like them. She was separate. She had a cushion, an army. She had Russell Hart. That was not luck. That was power. And I was just the man who had to be erased. My things were moved out on a Wednesday. The process was neat, orderly, final. I brought the movers myself. I would not let her see me broken. I walked through our rooms. Now they were just rooms in her house. I listened for a sound from her. Just the hollow echo of boxes being filled. The front door opened and closed, erasing a piece of me each time. When the sound stopped, I was gone. Later in the dark, she would claim my empty space. I could feel it. She would spread her life across the void I left and call it growth. I saw it as a conquest, erasing any proof that we were ever there. Then my mother called. My mother would understand. She had to. She had loved me for 30 years. I needed her to understand the woman her son had loved. Margot was admirable, but she was also a weapon. I waited for my mother to call me back, to say she had fought for me. But my mother's voice on the phone was different. She had not fought. She had completely surrendered. I know what he did. My mother's words cut right through me. She did not defend me. She begged for access to her grandchild. She asked woman to woman, and Margot, in her power, granted the request. Was never going to keep her from you. The words were a masterpiece of cruelty, so calm. Margot was not just removing me. She was curating her child's life, deciding who was worthy. My father's voice was hollow and defeated when he called. He did not deserve you, he told her. I know, she replied. Then the final twist. Cassandra sent a legal statement. She put in writing that I had lied, that I said the marriage was over. She chose a side, and it was not mine. She said she was no longer complicit, a noble word. I saw it differently. She needed to absolve herself, so she sacrificed me. Margot said they were in the same story, one neither of them wrote. She was wrong. They wrote the story together. I was just the villain they created. The idea I deserved better was a joke. She spoke of who she was, not what she had, as if they were separate. She wanted someone to see the big picture, but she hid that picture from me. It was a test I could never have passed. She would raise our daughter to know her own worth, to avoid my mistakes. She would teach our child to fear men like me, her father. I drove through the city that had her family's name on its buildings. I tried to name the feeling inside me. It was not grief or anger. It was the feeling of being erased. It was realizing the ground I stood on was never real. It was always hers. The ground was still there, and she stood on it. The light turned green. Eleanor. The name arrived in a text. A name chosen without me, for a child born in a room I was not allowed to enter. Her friends were there, her protectors. Flowers arrived from men who knew her preferences. The card welcomed Miss Eleanor and said, "The board will love you." A queen had given birth to a princess. And I, the father, was not there. It was her choice, clear and not cruel, she would say. She texted, "The baby is coming. Hope is a foolish thing. Please let me come," he typed. The answer was silence. Then pictures. And in his daughter's face, he saw the final consequence. He had been cast off. This is the only way she will have a life, but not with me. Today belongs to her. I granted her that. At 4:58, a doctor placed the child on her chest. 8 pounds, 1 ounce, dark hair, wide eyes. A world I had to save them from. I saw her say hello. The baby just stared. I knew what she felt. The love, the fear, the grief for the life we were supposed to have. The perfect image I held. She could not see the truth. I had to be complete for both of us. My entire life was a path leading to this single choice. Not the wedding, not the wealth, not the job or the house. Protecting her now. This was the burden I was meant to carry. She held the child, unaware. The world moved on around her. People came and went. The doctor checked her vitals, writing things down. She gave Margot a small smile. For a moment she thought was perfect, a moment I perfected for her. Then her mother arrived, Vivian Ellison, the woman who never showed emotion. She stood in the doorway and saw her daughter holding my child, and she broke. Not a quiet break, but a real one, a dam of feeling bursting. "The child looks like your father," she said. "I know," Margot answered. "He would have been." They sat in the silence of my absence. They called it beauty, or wait. I called it necessary. 6 days later, Margot was home in her kitchen. Morning light hit the window, the same light where I last saw her 7 weeks ago. This was peace. A quiet apartment, a future I had earned. I was making coffee. Cassandra was still asleep. It was still early. This felt right. A completely clean break. I had chosen honesty finally. I thought of Eleanor, a brief pang, a name on a screen. Margot would handle it. She was an Ellison. They handle things. I remembered my last words to Cassandra, a promise whispered in the dark. "You deserve the world." And so did I, a world away from all that weight. They were going to be okay. They had a system for everything, a manual. I was not in the manual. The coffee was ready. Light filled the kitchen. I did not check my phone. There was nothing I needed to see. This was my life now. I poured the coffee and drank it while it was hot. For the first time in years, I felt the simple warmth. It was a small thing, but it was everything. A month later, Cassandra showed me the Forbes piece. It was not about me. It was never about me. It was a profile of Ellison Holdings, an announcement about her foundation. There was a photo, Vivian, Margot, and the baby Eleanor, 3 weeks old, a prop in their perfect picture. It called Margot the controlling trustee, daughter of the late Theodore Ellison. 6 pages of her legacy. I read the article at our small table. Eleanor was just a name, a concept. The morning sun felt harsh. I did not feel erased, I felt free. I felt justified. This was what I had escaped. Someone else's story. That world was hers, it was never mine. For 3 years I was Margot's husband. It was just a role I played. I tried to believe it, and I almost did. But she was always Theo's daughter, always an Ellison, and I was just there. She knew who she was. The problem was that I knew it too. I was a footnote in her life story. I needed to write my own. The act was over. When the piece was published, I texted her. My name on her phone, a ghost. I let her open it. I saw the article, I had no idea. I knew, I just refused to see how big it was. "Margot, I am sorry." Useless words. "I know it does not fix anything, but I am sorry." She sent one reply. "Take care of yourself, Derek. Be good to her." It was a dismissal, not a conclusion. An erasure. That was the end of my chapter in her book. The baby had opinions. That is what Cassandra said people say about babies. I pictured a tiny Margot, a miniature chief executive officer, with thoughts about the milk's temperature and opinions on the sun's angle. It felt so distant, so unreal, like a life happening on a different planet. A 6-week-old person I helped make, a person I would never really know. It felt like the most incredible, terrifying thing. I had seen her art, cold and expensive objects that people just stared at. I'd been to her auctions, seen numbers so huge they stopped having any meaning. None of it felt real. But the idea of a daughter with opinions, that was real. And I was not there to hear them. It was for the best, I kept telling myself. It was for the best. They were in Connecticut for Thanksgiving, at the main house, not the small one we occasionally used. The one where I always felt like an intruder, filled with his ghost, his money, and his legacy. She was reclaiming it. That is the word she would use. Reclaiming it by filling it with new life. Vivian would be there, directing traffic in the kitchen. Patrice and her perfect little family. Russell, talking business to a baby. I was sure all the main players were in their correct places. My mother was there. Nora. Margot invited her, a deliberate move, a calculated act of kindness I could not comprehend. I saw my mother in my mind, holding a child that was half of me, singing a song from my own childhood, a past that felt a million miles away. My mother, Eleanor's grandmother. Margot let her have that. My failures were my own. My mother's love for that child was separate, a pure thing. Margot knew the difference. I hated that she knew. I hated her for that clarity. It made my choices feel so muddy and selfish. Patrice probably stood next to her, asking if she was happy, the question just hanging in the wine-filled air. I wondered what she answered. Did she ugly cry? Margot did not do ugly things. She did efficient things. She processed grief the way you would process a balance sheet. That was the Ellison method. I imagined her looking at my mother, at my child, and finding some way to be happy, or something that looked like it, something I had run away from. Then she would go into his study, the one room in that house I truly despised. It still smelled like him, Seigers and old paper and power. The furniture polish she bought was the kind he had always bought, an altar for a dead man. She would sit in his chair, and she would hold my daughter, and she would talk to him. Not to me, never again to me, but to him. A silent conversation, I almost house here, like a report being made to the chairman of the board. I found the wall, Dad. The choice between what is comfortable and what is true. I chose truth. She would see it that way. I was the comfortable choice, the easy lie she had to throw away to become herself. I was just a chapter she had to get through. She would believe she came of it stronger, better. She would see her bruises as proof of her win. She would hold that child and think about what she was able to keep. Not the anger, not me, just the lesson. Making herself small was a mistake she would never make again. A person who was supposed to see her chose not to. That was me. That is the story she would tell herself, and our daughter. It was terrible. And she landed on her feet. Of course she did. She was an Ellison. She always landed on her feet. For her, the prison door was already unlocked. She just had to walk out. She never considered that I was the one who was trapped, the one who had to break the lock. She wrote Cassandra a letter. I never saw it, and Cassandra never mentioned it. It was not about forgiveness. It was a final declaration, a closing of the account. We were both left in the dark. It was a neat, tidy ending. I hope you find someone who tells you the truth. A final, perfect cut. You deserve that, and so did I. She put us on the same side, two women betrayed by the same man. Then she moved on. By January, Eleanor was 3 months old, a real person with my father-in-law's judgmental look. Vivian cried when she first saw it. Margot went back to work part-time, being picky about her jobs. The great machine of her life roared back to life, and my absence was not even a whisper in its gears. She had a freedom I gave her, the freedom to work for enjoyment, not because she had to. She took on a small project, a private collection of important art. She was good at that type of work. I made sure she could be. She met a man in a plain office on a Tuesday. The room smelled of old paper and serious money. I know because I was there. I watched her explain her process, her past successes, her talent. She spoke with a confidence I had helped build for 15 years. She knew exactly how good she was. When they finished, the man stood and took her hand. "You are very impressive," he told her. "Thank you," she said. She actually meant it. It was not a performance, none of the fake modesty she used to put on. She meant it with a cold certainty, a directness she never had before. "Yes, I know." She got in her car and called a friend. "I got it. I am shocked," the friend said. Completely stunned. "Do not be obnoxious." "I am going to be obnoxious forever," she laughed. It was a real laugh, not the kind she used to create for a room, not the one she used with me. It came from somewhere new, a place I did not know. It did not ask for my permission. She drove home. The child was with Vivian. Her mother was inspecting the books in the nursery, sorting through them, replacing them, buying new ones from some special shop. The woman had her principles. She was building a fortress of their own design. The January sun cut through the windshield. It was different from the August light, different from that morning months ago when she stood there with a glass of water. Her life was changing then. I was changing it for her. In only 11 minutes of reading, her world had split open. This new light was cold and hard, the light of a season that was sure of itself. It did not seem broken. It seemed whole. Just light, she probably thought. Enough light to see by, enough to move on. She parked the car. She sat for a moment, not with the frozen stillness of August, not with the panic of a woman trapped in her own house. It was just a pause, a breath between the old life and the new one she was building on the foundation of my sacrifice. She was thinking about the woman she was 7 months ago, the woman with bare feet, a secret I had to keep, a secret I had to bury. She thought about what that woman did not know, and she thought about what she knew now. I land on my feet. I always have. I just forgot. I let someone else's small ideas become my prison. I am done with that prison. I am the whole thing now, the money, the art, the trust, the loss, the grief, and the child. The woman who drove 40 minutes for pale green tiles because she knew exactly what she wanted. I am all of it, and I am going inside. She went in, the door shutting behind her. Inside, I could imagine Vivian's voice reading a story, using a serious tone she saved for things she approved of. The child was making a listening sound. Margot put her keys on a table. She walked toward those voices. She walked into her life. My Eleanor grew up knowing she was loved, grew up with her name and its story. A story I wrote. A house with pale green tiles, a small piece of art on a wall, a grandmother who read to her with a serious voice. She grew up knowing her mother made a choice, that she once stood very still in a kitchen and chose. She chose the child. That is the story she will be told. A simple story, carefully built and edited by those who are left. A tale designed with purpose, crafted with care, meant to give her a truth she can carry. A lesson they want her to learn. But I am still here. And one day, the story will need a new ending. The real one. Our team carefully researches and creates these stories to deliver with valuable life lessons. Each one is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being a part of our community.